The first thing I heard was the boots. One pair at first, heavy and slow, climbing the wooden stairs like the building itself was counting down with me. Then another pair joined in, a half beat behind, like some dark echo. Nobody said a word out there. The whole hallway just breathed with them. I pressed my back against the wall by the door. The old paint felt cold through my t-shirt. My phone was in my hand, slick with sweat, the little screen lighting my fingers like I had done something holy instead of stupid. The last text I sent still glowed up at me. If you don't pay this week, I'm taking everything to the club president. I had meant to send it to my ex. But the name at the top of the screen was wrong. It wasn't my ex, Dale. It was Reagan, Blackridge president. I didn't even remember saving that number. I stared at it like maybe my eyes would fix it if I just wished hard enough. They didn't. A bike engine cut outside right then, low and rough, and the sound climbed my spine like someone dragging a chain. The boots stopped at my door. A shadow slipped under the crack, a dark line across the strip of hallway light. Someone on the other side laughed, low and mean, the kind of sound a man makes when he's not surprised to be here at all. Kara Halden, a voice said. Calm. Deep. Open up. We need to talk about that message. My lungs forgot how to work for a second. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles hurt. My son, Orrin, was asleep in the bedroom down the hall, his breathing already a little raspy tonight. I could hear the faint whistle on each exhale. I thought about his empty inhaler in the bathroom trash and the past due notice for his meds sitting on the table. None of that mattered to the men on the other side of the door. All they cared about was that one text. Let me back up a little, because that text was not the first mistake I made. It was just the loudest one. My name is Kara Halden. I'm in my late 30s, but my knees feel older than that from a lifetime of double shifts. I work nights at a place called Sage Diner, one of those 24-hour stops where the coffee tastes like burnt hope, but people keep ordering it anyway. I have an 11-year-old son named Orrin, who has asthma and questions that go too deep for bedtime. His father, Dale, sends us stories instead of money. At least, that's what he used to send. These days, he doesn't send anything. For hours before those boots hit my stairs, I was hunched over my second-hand laptop at the little wobbly table in our apartment. The screen glared back at me with more red than black. Overdue electric. Overdue gas. Rent notice with a friendly little final stamped at the top, like a joke. Come on, I whispered, even though talking to numbers never helped. I typed in my card info again. The little spinning circle went around like it was thinking about being nice. Declined. My hands were sticky with diner syrup and sweat. I wiped them on my jeans and tried not to cry onto the cheap plastic keyboard. The voicemail icon blinked on my phone. I tapped it. Kara, it's Sloan. My landlord's voice came through, too cheerful. Rent by Friday or you're out, all right? No more extensions. I got folks waiting for this unit. Friday was 2 days away. I had $32 in my bank account and a tip jar full of ones and quarters. From the bedroom, I heard the soft cough, a dry little bark that had been getting more common as the weather swung around. Orrin tried to pretend it didn't hurt. I got up and went to his doorway. He was curled on his side, brown hair stuck to his forehead, one thin arm wrapped around his stuffed fox, Brindle. The nightlight made little stars on his ceiling. He let out another cough, and then that faint wheeze. I checked the inhaler sitting on his dresser. I shook it and pressed down. Nothing. Of course. I had stretched the last refill as far as I could. Tomorrow, I had told myself. Tomorrow I'll figure it out. I watched his chest rise and fall for a minute. When you're a mom, you learn to read every breath like a weather report. Some nights feel like clear skies. That night felt like clouds stacking up. Back in the main room, I picked up my phone and scrolled through old messages from Dale. Promises that looked pretty in text bubbles. Got you next week, I swear. Big money coming in soon, babe. Club job. Once this score hits, we'll be set. Tell the kid I love him. He had been a prospect for a local biker club, the Blackridge chapter, years back. He liked to brag about it. He'd talk about the president, saying the title like other people say doctor or pastor. Man's untouchable, care. He'd say, beer breath hot on my cheek. Reagan runs this whole side of the state. Nobody crosses him. He said it with this weird pride, like standing near the danger made him dangerous too. Then one day he stopped standing near anything. He just left. No more rent help. No more inhaler money. No more birthday presents that smelled like gas station cologne and guilt. Just me, the bills, and a kid who still asked if his dad was busy working for the club, instead of what he really was, gone. By the time my card got declined for the third time that night, something in me snapped. Not big and dramatic. More like one of those quiet snaps when a tired woman runs out of patience. I opened my contacts. I had 2 numbers for Dale. One was labeled Dale, old. The other Dale, new. With a question mark because he changed phones like socks when he was on some scheme or other. I tapped what I thought was his latest one. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, and for a second I thought about just begging. Please, we need rent. Please, your son needs meds. But I had begged before. It hadn't done a thing. So instead, I got angry. I typed, my heart beating faster with every word. Rent's due. Oren needs his meds. I know about the club money you took, Dale. Pay up this week, or I tell your president exactly what you did. My hand was shaking, but not from fear yet. From tired rage. I read it over. It sounded tough. Strong. Like the version of me I used to be before life ground me down with night shifts and collection calls. Then I hit send. If you've ever sent a message you wish you could grab back out of the air, you know that little half-second afterward, when the bubble whooshes away and you feel your stomach go with it. If you've been there, tap that like button, because you and me have walked the same cliff edge. The phone screen went dim in my palm. I dropped it on the couch like it was hot, then paced once around the table, chewing the inside of my cheek. That was dumb, I muttered. That was so dumb. But it was done. I told myself he deserved a scare. I told myself maybe fear of that untouchable president would finally make him act like a father. The phone buzzed before it even settled into the cushion. I grabbed it, expecting one of his usual weak excuses. The message said, "Who is this?" Not Kara. Not care. Just, "Who is this?" I frowned and scrolled up to check the thread. There was no thread. No history. No old messages. Just my thread, sitting there alone, and that cold little reply under it. Who is this? I looked up to the top of the screen. The name wasn't Dale New. Somehow my thumb must have slipped. The name was Reagan, Blackridge president. I did not feel tough anymore. For a long second, I just stared at that name. Reagan. I could hear Dale's voice from years back, bragging in our old kitchen while he flicked ash into the sink. Reagan Maddox, he'd said once, like he was dropping a celebrity's name. President of Blackridge. Man doesn't forget a debt. Ever. Back then, I had pushed the words away. Club business. Man talk. Not my lane. Now his name was lit up on my screen, waiting for me. The president himself, on the other end of my bluff. My heart started hammering so hard my vision pulsed with it. I swallowed, my mouth dry like I had swallowed all the dust off the diner floor. I typed with clumsy fingers. Wrong person. Sorry. Ignore this. I hit send. The 3 dots popped up almost right away. Whoever he was still looking at the phone. Still thinking. Then his reply came. Which club money? Just 3 words. Simple. But they felt like fingers closing around my ankle when I thought I'd gotten away. Forget it, I sent back. Just a mistake. I stared at that last word. Mistake. And felt my throat tighten. This whole year felt like that word. My marriage. My savings. My faith in people. The dots appeared again. Paused. Vanished. Came back. Like he was weighing my soul on a scale somewhere. Then name. Now. I almost dropped the phone. My first instinct was to lie. To make up something fake, toss a random name into the fire, and hope it burned out there instead of here. But every name I thought of had a face. Someone from the diner. Mr. Jory across the hall. The woman downstairs with 2 toddlers and that tired smile. I couldn't drag anyone else into this. I had messed up by myself. I'd take the hit by myself. So I did the only thing a coward like me could think of. I didn't reply. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I just locked the screen and set the phone face down on the table, like that would mute reality. My hands shook. I pressed my palms together like I might pray, but no words came. I made myself breathe. In, out, in, out. It's fine, I whispered, lying to myself. Big man in a leather jacket has better things to do than chase some stupid text. From down the hall, Oren coughed again. This time it dug deeper. I rushed in, sat on the edge of his bed, and rubbed his back in slow circles. The wheeze on his next inhale sounded longer. You okay, baby? I asked. He blinked up at me, still mostly asleep. Just dusty, he mumbled. It's all good, Mom. He tried to smile. He always did that, tried to take care of me while I took care of him. I kissed his forehead. It felt a little warm. When I came back into the main room, the phone was buzzing again. I flipped it over, dread already crawling up my neck. Already know who you are, Kara Halden. My name on that screen looked wrong. Exposed. The next message landed before I could even answer. A full address. My address. Street, apartment number, even the floor. Then another line. The boy's breathing is rough tonight. The room tilted. I looked toward Oren's doorway, like I expected to see someone standing there. There was no one. Just his little night light and the soft hiss of his air purifier. My chest went cold. I went to the window by reflex and pushed 2 fingers into the blinds, tilting them just enough to peek outside. The street in front of our building was usually empty this time of night. A couple of parked sedans. The landlord's old truck. Sometimes a stray cat fighting with a trash bag. Tonight, there were shapes that did not belong. 2 blacked-out cars sat nose to tail along the curb, engines low, lights off. Between them, lined up like a row of dark horses, were motorcycles. Some big and shiny, some older and dull. A few of them still hummed softly, ticking as the metal cooled. On the backs of the men moving around them, I saw leather. Patches, skulls and wings and flame designs, all stitched in thick thread. One back caught the light from the street lamp just right. A rocker patch curved across the top, Blackridge. Another along the bottom, west side. My stomach found the floor. A tall man stood by the front steps of my building, a cigarette ember flaring near his mouth. He tipped his head back, looking up toward my windows like he already knew which one was mine. I let the blinds fall shut and stepped back fast, heart banging against my ribs. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Open up, Kara. Let's keep the boy asleep. That line made my skin crawl and relax at the same time, like a threat wrapped in concern. My first thought was to call the police. That's what you're supposed to do when bikers show up in formation outside your home, right? But then I pictured explaining. Yes, officer, I threatened the president of an outlaw motorcycle club by text because my ex stole their money. No, I don't know where my ex is. No, I can't pay rent. I had seen enough in this neighborhood to know how that might end. A patrol car rolling by an hour too late. A shrug. Maybe a quiet suggestion to not stir that pot, ma'am. Out in the hall, the building creaked. The old radiator hissed. Then I heard it, the front door downstairs opening. The shift in air when heavy boots crossed the threshold. The stairwell amplified every step. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slow. Unhurried. Like they already knew I was trapped. I slid the chain across my door and pressed my eye to the peephole. All I could see at first was worn leather and a gray smear of beard. The fisheye glass made the hallway look curved, like I was peering into another world where all the rules were different. A man shifted back just enough for me to see more of him. Tall, broad shoulders under a black cut with patches that matched the ones outside. His beard was steel gray, clipped neat. His eyes, when they lifted straight to the peephole, were steady. Too steady. He knocked once. Not hard. Just a firm tap that said he didn't need to knock twice. Ms. Halden, he said, voice clear. Name's Reagan. You and I have business. Another man stood a step behind him, bigger, with a shaved head and arms like tree trunks. His face gave nothing away. Just watched the door like it was about to try something. Across the hall, I heard the soft click of another door opening. Mr. Jory, my old neighbor, peeked his head out, white hair sticking up from sleep. He squinted at the bikers, blinking behind his glasses. Everything all right out here? He asked, voice thin but brave. Reagan turned his head toward him, and just like that, his whole face shifted. The hard lines softened. He smiled, polite. Evening, sir, he said. Just sorting out some paperwork with Miss Halden here. Sorry about the late noise. He sounded like a man confirming a dentist appointment, not someone who had a convoy of patched riders parked outside. Mr. Jory looked at me through the crack in my door. You okay, Kara? He called. My throat closed. For a heartbeat, I wanted to fling the door open and run into his little cluttered apartment, sit on his couch that smelled like old pipe smoke, and let him call whoever he wanted. But then I heard Oren cough again from the bedroom, a thin, sharp sound that cut through my panic like a blade. I forced my lips to move. Yeah, Mr. Jory, I said, loud enough to carry. I'm okay. Just a mix-up. He frowned, but he nodded politely. All right then. Call if you need anything. His door shut with a soft thump. Reagan turned back to my door, the polite neighbor face slipping off like a mask. The steady eyes were back. Ms. Halden, he said, quieter now. We need to talk about that message you sent. Before someone less patient than me comes looking. Behind him, the big man shifted his weight, boots creaking on the old floorboards. Downstairs, a bike engine turned over once, then went quiet. I stood there with my hand on the deadbolt, every nerve screaming at me to run, to hide, to fight, to do anything but what I knew I was about to do. If you were standing in my shoes right now, hand on that lock, heart in your throat, what would you do? Open the door or call for help? Drop your answer in the comments, because this is where my night took a turn I never saw coming. I slid the chain free, and then, with my son wheezing in the next room and a president of an outlaw club on the other side of thin wood, I turned the lock and opened the door. The door swung open, and the air in the hallway felt heavier than the air inside, like I had just invited weather into my home instead of men. Reagan stepped in first. He moved slow, controlled, the way someone moves when they know no one's going to stop them. His boots were scuffed but clean. His cut hung open over a black t-shirt, and I could see the edge of a tattoo crawling up his collarbone, something dark and coiled. Behind him, the big man filled the doorway. He didn't come in right away, just stood there like a wall made of muscle and quiet. Reagan's eyes swept the room in one smooth pass. The sagging couch, the stack of bills on the table, the crayon drawing Orrin had taped to the fridge, a lopsided house with a son that had too many arms. He took it all in without saying a word, and somehow that felt worse than if he'd laughed at it. "You live here alone?" he asked. His voice was calm, like he was making small talk at a gas station. "Me and my son," I said. My voice came out thin and scratchy. I cleared my throat and tried again. "He's 11. He's asleep." Reagan nodded once, like that made sense. "The one with the breathing trouble." It wasn't a question. A chill crawled up the back of my neck. "How do you know about that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the table and picked up the overdue notice sitting there, the one from the pharmacy. He held it between two fingers, read it without asking permission, then set it back down exactly where it had been. "You sent a message tonight," he said. "About club money. About someone stealing from us. You want to tell me who you were talking about?" I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like copper. It was a mistake. I meant to text my ex, Dale. Dale Torrance. He used to run with you guys. Years back. Reagan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. The big man in the doorway tilted his head just a fraction, like a dog hearing a sound too far off for humans. "Dale Torrance," Reagan repeated, slower this time, like he was tasting the name. "Yeah, I remember Dale." The way he said it made my stomach drop. "He was a prospect," Reagan went on. "Ran errands for us back when he still had the sense to keep his mouth shut and his hands to himself. Haven't seen him in about 8 months. You know where he is now?" I shook my head fast. "No, I swear." He took off. Stopped paying child support. Stopped answering calls. I don't know where he went. Reagan studied me for a long moment, his gray eyes flat and unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward me. On the screen was a photo. A storage unit, the kind with the orange roll-up door. Inside, I could see a duffel bag half open, cash spilling out in messy stacks. Next to it, a black ledger, the kind with the hard cover and the little elastic strap. "This," Reagan said, "is what your ex took from us 3 weeks ago. 22,000 in cash and a ledger full of names, routes, and meeting spots. Things that could get a lot of people hurt if they ended up in the wrong hands." My knees felt weak. I sat down hard on the arm of the couch. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know he stole anything." "I believe you," Reagan said, and for some reason, that made it worse. "But here's the problem, Ms. Halden. Dale's not just running from us. He's been talking to people. Dangerous people. The kind who'd love to get their hands on that ledger and use it to start a war." He put his phone away and leaned back against the table, crossing his arms. He looked almost relaxed, but his eyes stayed sharp. "We traced some calls," he continued. "Dale's been in contact with a crew out of the northern end. The Grinders. Ever heard of them?" I shook my head. "Good. You don't want to. They're the kind of people who don't care about kids or single moms or who's in the way. If they think you know where Dale is, or if they think you've got something they want, they'll come through that door a lot less politely than I did." My breath caught. I thought about Orrin asleep in the next room, his little chest rising and falling, that faint rasp still hanging in the air. "I don't have anything," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know where Dale is. I don't know anything about a ledger. I just wanted him to pay his child support so I could keep a roof over my son's head. Reagan watched me for a long moment. Then he glanced at the big man still standing in the doorway. Varric, he said, check the kid. My whole body went rigid. Wait. Varric moved before I could finish. He walked past me, silent as a shadow, and disappeared down the short hallway toward Oren's room. I stood up fast, panic flooding my chest. Don't wake him. Please. He's sick. He needs to sleep. Reagan held up one hand, calm and steady. Varric's not going to hurt him. He's just making sure the boy's okay. I stood there frozen, fists clenched at my sides, listening to the soft creak of Oren's door opening. I heard the low rumble of Varric's voice, too quiet to make out the words. Then the door creaked shut again. Varric came back a moment later and gave Reagan a single nod. Kid's asleep. Breathing's rough, though. Needs a nebulizer or a fresh inhaler. Reagan looked at me. When's the last time he had his meds? 3 days ago. I admitted, shame burning in my throat. I couldn't afford the refill yet. Something flickered across Reagan's face, too fast for me to name. He pulled out his phone again, typed something quick, then pocketed it. We've got a medic, he said. Name's Evo. He'll have what the boy needs before sunrise. I blinked, confused. Why would you help us? Reagan straightened up, his expression hard again. Because whether you like it or not, you're in this now. Dale put you in it the second he started running his mouth to the wrong people. And those people? They're going to come looking. Not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. He walked closer, and I had to fight the urge to step back. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You and the boy are coming with us. Tonight. We've got a safe place outside the city. You'll stay there until we find Dale and clean this mess up. I can't just leave, I said, my voice rising. I have work. I have rent due. You won't have any of that if you're dead, Reagan cut in, his tone flat. And neither will your son. The words hit me like a slap. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was just telling me the truth. I looked around my tiny apartment, at the peeling paint and the secondhand furniture and the crayon drawings on the fridge. It wasn't much, but it was ours. What if I say no? I asked quietly. Reagan's mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile, but forgot how. Then I leave, and you wait here for the grinders to knock. And when they do, you won't get a choice. I closed my eyes and thought about Oren, about his wheezing breath and his stuffed fox, and the way he still asked about his dad, like maybe one day Dale would show up and be the man he was supposed to be. When I opened my eyes again, Reagan was still watching me. If you think a real man protects his family instead of gambling with their lives, comment family comes first below, I said, almost to myself, remembering something I'd heard once. Then I looked at Reagan. How do I know you're not lying? You don't, he said simply. But you've got about 10 minutes to decide if you trust me more than you trust luck. I looked down the hallway toward Oren's room. I could still hear that faint wheeze, even from here. Okay, I whispered. We'll go. Reagan nodded once, all business now. Pack light. 1 bag. Clothes, meds, whatever the boy can't sleep without. Varric will help you carry it. He turned toward the door, then paused, and looked back at me. For what it's worth, Ms. Halden, he said, I'm sorry your ex put you in this spot, but we're going to get you and your boy out of it. That's a promise. And somehow, standing there in my falling apart apartment with a biker president and his silent enforcer, I believed him. I moved on autopilot, hands shaking as I pulled an old duffel bag out from under my bed. The zipper stuck halfway, and I had to yank it twice before it gave. My mind was spinning too fast to land on any one thought. All I could do was move. Clothes first. I grabbed a handful of my own things without looking, stuffed them in. Then I went to Oren's room. He was still asleep, curled on his side with Brindle tucked under his chin. His breathing sounded worse now that I was listening for it, each inhale catching just a little, like his lungs were working too hard. I knelt by his bed and brushed the hair off his forehead. His skin felt warm, not quite fever hot, but close. Oren, I whispered. Baby, wake up. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Mom. Hey, sweet boy. We're going on a little trip, okay? Just for a few days. He blinked, trying to make sense of my words through the fog of sleep. Is it morning? Not yet, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. But we need to go now. Can you get up for me? He sat up slowly, coughing once into his fist. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, I said, and I prayed that wasn't a lie. He looked past me toward the door, where Varric's huge shadow filled the frame. Oren's eyes went wide. "Who's that?" "He's a friend," I said quickly. "He's going to help us, okay? Everything's fine." Oren looked at me like he wasn't sure he believed that, but he nodded anyway. That's the thing about kids. They trust you even when your voice is shaking. I helped him into his sneakers and his jacket, the blue one with the patch on the elbow where I'd sewn it after he caught it on a fence. He held Brindle tight against his chest. "Can I bring my cars?" he asked. I glanced at the little row of toy cars lined up on his dresser. "Just one, baby. Pick your favorite." He thought about it for a second, then grabbed the red one, the old Mustang with the chipped paint. He'd gotten it at a yard sale 2 summers ago and carried it everywhere for months. I shoved a few more of his clothes into the bag, grabbed his school notebook and the picture of the two of us from the fridge, the one where we're both smiling at the zoo in front of the penguin tank. I didn't know why I grabbed it. I just couldn't leave it behind. When I came back into the main room, Reagan was on his phone, speaking low. He looked up when he saw us. "Ready? As much as we're going to be," I said. He pocketed his phone and looked at Oren. His whole face softened in a way I didn't expect. "Hey, buddy," he said, crouching down so he was at Oren's level. "I'm Reagan. I hear you're the man of the house." Oren looked at me, uncertain, then back at Reagan. "I guess," he said quietly. "Well, I'm going to make sure you and your mom are safe, all right? We're going to a place where you can breathe a little easier." "Sound good?" Oren nodded, his grip on Brindle tightening. Reagan stood and looked at me. "We've got a van downstairs. Evo's already on his way with a nebulizer and a fresh inhaler. He'll meet us at the compound." "Compound?" I asked. "Where we're taking you," Reagan said. "It's secure. No one gets in unless we let them." I wanted to ask more, but Varric was already picking up my duffel bag like it weighed nothing. Reagan opened the door and gestured for us to follow. I took Oren's hand and stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, buzzing like a trapped fly. Down the stairs, I could hear voices, low and steady, and the creak of boots on old wood. When we got outside, the night air hit me like cold water. The street was still lined with bikes and cars, but now there were more men standing around, some smoking, some just watching. All of them wore cuts with that same patch, Blackridge, West Side. One of them, a younger guy with a scar across his eyebrow, looked at Oren and gave him a small nod. "Hey, little man." Oren pressed closer to me, but didn't say anything. A dark van sat at the curb, engine idling. The side door slid open, and I saw a bench seat inside, worn but clean. Reagan climbed in first, then held out a hand to help me and Oren up. Varric got in last, pulling the door shut behind him. The inside of the van smelled like leather and motor oil and something faintly sweet, like someone had been eating candy. Reagan leaned forward and tapped the driver's shoulder. "Let's move." The van pulled away from the curb, smooth and quiet. I watched my building disappear through the back window, the lights in Mr. Jory's window still on, the busted street lamp flickering like it always did. Oren leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, "is Dad going to meet us there?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I looked down at him, at his tired eyes and his hopeful face, and I didn't know what to say. Reagan answered before I could. "Your dad's not going to be there, buddy, but you're going to be safe. That's what matters." Oren looked at him, then back at me. I nodded, and he seemed to accept that, even though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. We drove in silence for a while, the city lights fading behind us as we headed out toward the industrial edge of town. The streets got darker, the buildings farther apart. I didn't recognize where we were anymore. "How far is it?" I asked. "About 40 minutes, Reagan said. "Sit tight. We'll be there soon." I closed my eyes and focused on Oren's breathing. It still had that faint wheeze, but it was steady. That was something. Varric, who hadn't said a word since we got in the van, reached into a bag by his feet and pulled out a bottle of water. He handed it to me without a word. "Thanks," I said quietly. He just nodded. As we drove, I noticed one of the other guys in the front passenger seat turning around. He was older, with gray streaks in his beard and a face that looked like it had seen too many fights. But his eyes were kind. "Name's Decker," he said. "You need anything, you let me know, all right?" "Okay," I said, not sure what else to say. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pack of crackers, the kind you get at gas stations. He handed them back to Oren. "For the road, kid." Oren took them carefully, looking at me for permission. I nodded, and he opened the package and started eating, one small cracker at a time. I watched these men, These bikers with their leather and their patches and their hard faces, and I realized something strange. They were taking care of us. Not because they had to. Not because we paid them. Just because Reagan had decided we were under his protection now. And for the first time since I'd opened that door and seen those boots in my hallway, I felt something other than fear. I felt safe. The van turned off the main road onto a gravel path that crunched under the tires. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches making shadows that looked like reaching hands. In the distance, I saw a glow, warm and orange, like a campfire or porch lights. "We're here," Reagan said. I looked out the window and saw the compound for the first time. It wasn't what I expected. No rundown shack or grimy warehouse. It was an old converted barn, sturdy and clean, with lights strung across the front and a couple of motorcycles parked in neat rows. There was a chain-link fence around the perimeter and 2 men standing by the gate, watching as we approached. The van slowed, and one of the men waved us through. As we pulled into the yard, I saw more people. Women sitting on the porch steps, talking and laughing. A couple of kids running around with a dog, their voices high and happy. It looked almost normal. Reagan opened the door and stepped out, then turned to help me and Orrin down. "Welcome to Blackridge," he said. And standing there in the gravel with my son's hand in mine and the weight of the last few hours pressing down on my chest, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. The air inside the Blackridge compound felt different from the night outside. Warmer, thicker with smells I didn't expect. Coffee, engine oil, cigarette smoke, and something like fried onions drifting in from somewhere down the hall. It was the kind of smell that said people actually lived here, not just hid out. Orrin's hand squeezed mine as we stepped into the main room. It was wide and open, with a pool table in the center and old couches pushed up against the walls. Framed photos covered one side. Groups of bikers lined up beside their bikes, kids holding out wrapped gifts, men and women in leather posing with boxes of canned food. It didn't look like a hideout. It looked like a strange kind of family room. A woman in her 50s with her hair twisted up in a bandana walked toward us, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her name, stitched in small letters on her vest, said Merritt. Her eyes went straight to Orrin first. "Well now," she said with a soft smile. "You must be Orrin." He nodded, his eyes big, brindle clutched tight. His breathing still had that thin whistle in it. Merritt glanced at Reagan. This is him," Reagan said. "And this is his mom, Kara. They're staying in the guest room." Merritt nodded like she'd been expecting us all along. "Room's ready. Clean sheets, extra blanket. I put a little heater in there. The night's bite out here." She turned back to Orrin. "You like cars, honey?" He held up his red toy Mustang without a word. She chuckled. "Thought so. My grandson used to park his all over my kitchen table. You come with me, and I'll show you where you can set yours up, all right?" He looked up at me, asking without words if it was okay. "It's all right," I said. "I'll be right behind you." Merritt held out her hand, and after a second, Orrin slid his small fingers into her rough, ringed ones. They walked down the hall together, his shoulders relaxing just a little. "You did good bringing them in," she said over her shoulder to Reagan. "Kid looks like he needs a bed and a deep breath." "We're working on both," Reagan replied. A man with a medical bag slung over his shoulder came in through a side door. He had long hair pulled back in a low tie, glasses that kept slipping down his nose, and a calm, tired face. "Evo," Reagan called. "This is Kara. Boy's name is Orrin. Asthma." Evo nodded at me, already moving. "He in the room?" "Just went with Merritt," I said. "Good," Evo replied. "Let's get him settled and hooked up before that wheeze gets worse." They disappeared down the hall, and I stood alone in the main room with Reagan and the noise of the compound humming quietly around us. Men laughed somewhere out of sight. A TV murmured low. Someone clicked pool balls together, the crack echoing off the high ceiling. I realized then how bone-deep tired I was. The kind of tired that lives in your joints. Reagan gestured toward a worn couch. "Sit a minute," he said. "You look like you're about to fall over." I sank down without arguing. The cushion sighed under me. "You said this place is safe?" I reminded him. "From the grinders." "It is," he said. "We've got eyes on all the roads in. Cameras at every corner. Nobody gets within 50 yards of this fence without us knowing." "And Dale?" I asked. Even saying his name felt heavy. Reagan watched me. "We'll find him. We're already closer than he thinks." "How?" I asked. He didn't answer with words right away. Instead, he walked over to one of the walls and tapped a few keys on a computer I hadn't noticed before. The screen lit up with a map of the city, little colored dots marking spots around it. Your ex likes patterns, Reagan said. He thinks he doesn't, but he does. He uses the same bus stations when he's laying low. Same motels when he's short on cash. Same pawn shops when he's flipping stolen junk for fast money. He clicked a few more times, zooming in on a cluster of dots. We hit one of his old storage units this morning, he went on. Found some things he didn't mean for us to see. He pulled up a folder on the screen. Photos filled it, grainy shots from security cameras, snapshots from a phone. One of them made my blood run cold. It was me and Oren. We were coming out of his school, Oren's backpack bouncing as he hopped down the steps. I had my hair up and my head down, checking my phone. Dale was nowhere in the picture, but his eyes had been somewhere close enough to take it. Another photo showed us going into our building. Another, Oren on the swings at the little park down the block. How long have you had those? I whispered. Since this morning, Reagan said. But they were taken over the last couple of months. He clicked again, and another image came up. A bus ticket on a cracked counter. I leaned forward to read it. Departure, our town. Destination, 3 states away. Under the ticket, scrawled on a paper napkin, were the words, Plan B if things go bad. My fingers curled into my palms. He was going to take Oren, I said. Just grab him and run. Reagan's jaw tightened. Maybe. Or maybe just you. Or maybe both of you as bargaining chips. There's more. He opened one last file. It was a draft text on a cheap prepaid phone, screen cracked at the corner. The message wasn't sent, but it was fully typed. I can deliver the president's ledger and his loose ends. Woman and kid. We trade, I walk. For a second, the room went very quiet in my head. The TV, the laughs, the muffled voices, they all faded. There was just those words and the sound of my own pulse. His loose ends, I repeated. That's what we are to him. Reagan didn't answer right away. He just let me sit with it, even though it felt like sitting in the middle of a storm. I thought about Oren asking if his dad would be at the compound. The way he'd said it, hopeful like it was still possible. Like the man who had planned to trade us away was someone we should wait for. Something in me broke then. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft click, like a lock finally turning the other way. I begged that man for help. I said, my voice shaking. I begged him for rent money, for medicine, for his time, and he was out here planning to sell us off like parts in a junkyard. Reagan's eyes softened, just a little. That's the truth of it, he said, and you needed to see it. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and realized somewhere along the way, tears had snuck out. If you think selling out your own family is the lowest thing a person can do, I said, voice rough, hit that like button. Because people like Dale, they count on us staying quiet about what they are. I took a shaky breath. So what now? Now, Reagan said, you get some rest. Evo will set your boy up in the guest room with a nebulizer. Merritt will make sure you've got a blanket and something warm to drink. In a few hours, when the sun's still down and the city's still half asleep, we'll make a call. A call? I asked. To Dale, Reagan said. And you're the one who's going to talk. His steady gaze told me this night wasn't close to over. The guest room they gave us was small but clean. White walls with a few old posters tacked up, vintage bike rallies, a charity poker run, a faded picture of a lake at sunset. There were 2 narrow beds with matching gray blankets and a little table between them with a lamp that hummed softly. Oren lay on the bed closest to the wall, a nebulizer mask over his nose and mouth. The machine at his side hummed and puffed a soft mist with every breath he took. His eyes were half closed, fixed on some point in the ceiling only he could see. Evo sat on the edge of the bed, watching the numbers on a small handheld monitor. His movements were calm and sure, like he'd done this 100 times. His lungs are tight, he said quietly. But this will help loosen things up. He'll sleep better after. Thank you, I said. I'd been saying those words so much they were starting to feel strange in my mouth. Thank you to bikers. Thank you to men in leather and boots who showed up at my door like a storm. But I meant it. Merritt came in with a mug of something steaming. Chamomile and honey, she said, setting it on the little table by the other bed. Won't fix your life, but it'll sit nice in your chest. I gave her a tired smile. That's more than most things do. She chuckled. Ain't that the truth? She looked at Oren, then back at me. You want me to sit with him while you wash up? There's a bathroom down the hall. fresh towels on the shelf. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, just for a minute. The bathroom mirror showed me someone who looked more like my own mother than the woman I thought I was. New lines around my eyes. Shadows so deep under them, they could almost be bruises. I splashed water on my face and stared at myself. What are you doing? I whispered. Running to a biker compound with your kid. Trusting men a judge would probably warn you about. Believing a president of an outlaw club when he said the word safe. And yet, out in that room, my son was breathing better than he had all week. When I came back, Ivo was packing up his bag. The nebulizer still hummed beside Oren's pillow, but his chest was moving easier now. The whistle in his breath had softened. He'll need a proper inhaler picked up tomorrow, Ivo said, checking his watch. We've got a guy heading into town in the morning. I'll send the script with him. You'll have it by lunch. You're doing all this for us, I said. You don't even know us. He shrugged one shoulder. We know enough. Kid who can't breathe, mom who's been trying to hold it together alone. That's more than I need to know. He slung the bag over his shoulder and paused in the doorway. Get some sleep if you can. You're going to have a big talk soon. When he left, Merritt pulled the blanket up over Oren, tucking it around his shoulders the way I usually did. First night's always the hardest, she said. You hear bikes coming and going, men laughing too loud, doors closing. But you'll also notice something else. What's that? I asked. No one here yells at kids, she said. No one here hits women. We've done our share of wrong, don't get me wrong. But under this roof, we take care. That was Reagan's rule from the start. She straightened, her joints popping slightly. I'm just down the hall if you need anything, she said. Ask for me or for Decker. And if some prospect tries to act cute, tell him Merritt said she'll take his patch and his pride in one go. A laugh slipped out of me without permission. It felt strange and good. Thank you, I said again. Get some rest, she replied, and closed the door behind her. The room fell quiet except for the soft hum of the nebulizer and Oren's slowing breaths. I lay down on the other bed, shoes kicked off, and stared at the ceiling. I thought sleep would be impossible, but the weight of the day finally pinned my eyes shut. I don't know how long I was out before someone knocked gently on the door. Kara, a voice said low. You awake? It was Reagan. I slipped out of bed and opened the door a crack. The hallway light framed him, turning his gray beard almost silver. He'd taken off his cut, and for the first time, he looked less like a president and more like a tired man. Sorry to wake you, he said, but we've got a window on your ex. If we're going to use it, it has to be now. My stomach clenched. You found him. Pretty sure, he said. Motel off Industrial. He used a card he shouldn't have. Decker caught it. He nodded toward the main room. Phone's ready. Line is secure. We'll record the call, trace it, and roll if we like what we hear. And what do you need me to do? I asked, even though I already knew. Be the bait, he said honestly. You call. You tell him you're scared. You tell him you sent that text to the wrong man. You tell him you're in trouble and you need him. You pull every string you've got. Anger flared under my ribs. He doesn't care if I'm in trouble. Maybe not, Reagan said. But he cares about his own neck. If he thinks you're about to give us something that ties back to him, he'll move. And when he moves, we'll see him. I glanced back at Oren. He was still asleep, his chest moving slow and steady now. I don't want him hearing that call, I said. He won't, Reagan replied. I'll have Merritt sit with him. We'll talk in the office. For a second, I just stood there, hand on the doorframe, feeling the old anger and the new fear twist together. I don't know if I can hear his voice again, I admitted. Not after what you showed me. Reagan's gaze stayed steady. You can, he said. Because this time, you're not the one begging. This time, you're the one walking him right into the light. He let that sit between us for a moment. If you've ever had to confront someone who used you and hurt you, and you did it anyway because it was the only way to protect someone you love, I said softly, almost like I was talking to the folks on the other side of a screen, hit subscribe. Stories like this are hard to tell, but they matter. And on this channel, we speak up for the ones who got left holding the pieces. I looked back at Reagan and nodded. All right, I said. Let's make the call. He stepped back to let me into the hall. As I closed the door gently behind me, I looked one last time at Oren, sleeping safe in a bed owned by men the world would tell me to fear. Sometimes, the monsters don't look the way you were told. And sometimes, the help doesn't either. We walked down the hall together toward the office, where the phone waited and the night was ready for the next turn. The office was smaller than I expected. One desk with a laptop, a couple of folding chairs, and a wall covered in maps and photos pinned with red tacks. It smelled like old coffee and leather. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting everything in a yellow glow that made the shadows darker. Reagan sat behind the desk and gestured for me to take the chair across from him. Decker was already there, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He gave me a small nod when I sat down. On the desk, a phone sat on speaker mode, the screen blank and waiting. "We'll dial," Reagan said. "You talk. Keep it simple. You're scared. You made a mistake. You need his help. Let him think he's in control." My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. "What if he doesn't answer?" I asked. "He'll answer," Decker said. "Man like that can't help himself. Especially if he thinks you're desperate." Reagan tapped a few keys on the laptop, then nodded at Decker. "Ready?" Decker pressed a button on a small black box next to the phone. A tiny red light blinked on. "Recording." Reagan dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, a click. "Yeah." Dale's voice came through, rough and suspicious. He sounded like he'd just woken up, or maybe like he hadn't slept in days. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. Reagan's eyes stayed on mine, steady and calm. I forced myself to speak. "Dale," I said, and my voice cracked. "It's me. It's Kara." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end, the rustle of fabric like he was sitting up. "Kara," he said slowly. "The hell are you calling me for? It's the middle of the night." "I know," I said, letting the fear creep into my voice. "It wasn't hard. I know I'm sorry. I messed up, Dale. I messed up bad." "What are you talking about?" "I sent a text tonight," I said. "I was trying to reach you, to get you to pay what you owe, and I sent it to the wrong person." Silence. "Then, what person?" Your old boss," I whispered. "The president." "Reagan." I heard him suck in a breath, sharp and fast. "You did what?" "I didn't mean to," I said, my voice rising. "I was just trying to scare you into helping us. I thought if I threatened to tell him about the money, you'd finally do something. But I hit the wrong name and now." "Now what?" Dale snapped. "What did he say?" "He showed up at my door," I said, and the tears in my voice weren't fake anymore. "He came with his guys, Dale. He knows your name. He knows about Oren. He knows where we live." "Jesus," Dale muttered. I could hear him moving now, pacing maybe, or packing. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," I said. "I told him I didn't know where you were. I told him it was a mistake. But he didn't believe me." Dale swore under his breath, low and vicious. "You stupid. I need your help." I cut him off, my voice breaking. "He said people are looking for you. Bad people. He said they might come after me and Oren if they think we know something." "Dale, I'm scared." There was a long pause. I could almost see him in my mind, rubbing his face, trying to figure out how to spin this in his favor. "Where are you now?" he asked. I glanced at Reagan. He nodded once. "I'm at a friend's place," I lied. "Across town." I grabbed Oren and left. I didn't know what else to do. "Good," Dale said. "Stay there. Don't go back to the apartment. Don't talk to anyone." "What about you?" I asked. "Dale, they're looking for you." "What did you do?" "Nothing," he said too fast. "I didn't do anything. It's just a misunderstanding. I'll handle it." "Handle it how?" I pressed. "They said you stole something. They said you were talking to people." "They're lying," he said, his voice sharp. "Whatever they told you, it's a lie. They're trying to scare you so you'll give me up." "I would never." "Listen to me," he said, cutting me off. "You stay quiet. You keep your head down. I'll reach out when it's safe." "When?" I asked. "Dale, when?" "I don't know," he shouted, and I flinched even though he wasn't in the room. Just give me a couple days, all right? I'm working on something. I'm going to fix this." "Fix what?" I asked, but I already knew he wouldn't answer. "I gotta go," he said. "Don't call this number again. I'll call you when I can." "Dale, wait." The line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone, my hands still pressed to my legs, my breath coming fast and shallow. Reagan leaned back in his chair. "You did good," he said. "Did we get anything?" I asked. Decker was already typing on the laptop, his eyes scanning lines of text I couldn't read. "Signal bounced through 2 towers," he said. "But the strongest ping came from the industrial zone, east side. Matches the motel we flagged earlier." Reagan stood. "Then that's where we're going." "Now?" I asked. "Now," he said. "Before he bolts." He looked at Decker. "Get Varric and Tiller. Bikes only." Quiet roll. Decker nodded and left the room. Reagan turned back to me. You stay here. Merritt will keep an eye on you and the boy. We'll be back before sunrise. What are you going to do to him? I asked quietly. Reagan's expression didn't change. We're going to have a conversation, he said. What happens after that depends on what he says. I wanted to ask more, but part of me didn't want to know. Part of me just wanted it to be over. He didn't ask about Oren, I said, my voice small. Not once. He didn't ask if he was okay. Reagan's jaw tightened. No, he said. He didn't. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back at me. You did the right thing tonight, Kara. Calling him. Facing him. That took guts. It didn't feel like guts, I said. It felt like survival. Sometimes, Reagan said, that's the same thing. And then he was gone, boots heavy down the hallway, the sound fading into the hum of the compound. I sat alone in the yellow light of the office, staring at the phone that had gone silent, and I thought about the man on the other end who had planned to trade his own son away like currency. And I hoped, quietly, that whatever conversation Reagan was about to have with him would end with Dale understanding exactly what he'd lost. The sky was still dark when I heard the bikes come back. I hadn't slept. I'd been sitting in the main room with Merritt, nursing cold coffee and watching the clock tick past 3 in the morning. When the rumble of engines rolled through the compound gates, Merritt stood and looked out the window. They're back, she said. I stood too, my legs stiff and my chest tight. Is Dale with them? She squinted into the dark. Can't tell yet. The door opened, and Reagan came in first. His face was hard to read, but there was something different in his eyes. Not anger, not satisfaction, just tired resolve. Behind him came Varric and 2 other men I didn't know well. No Dale. Where is he? I asked. Reagan pulled off his gloves and tossed them on the table. Gone, he said simply. Gone. I repeated. What does that mean? He sat down heavily on the arm of the couch. Means he ran. We got to the motel, but he'd already cleared out. Left his stuff, left the room trashed. He knew we were coming. My stomach sank. So he's still out there. For now, Reagan said. But he's running scared. And scared men make mistakes. We'll find him. What about the people he was talking to? I asked. The grinders? Reagan exchanged a look with Varric. We sent them a message, he said. Made it clear that anyone coming after you or your boy answers to us. They're not interested in a war. They'll leave you alone. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. So we're safe. You're safe, Reagan said. Dale's problem is still out there, but it's not yours anymore. Merritt brought over a fresh mug of coffee and set it in front of Reagan. He nodded his thanks. What happens now? I asked. Reagan looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. He set it on the table between us. What's that? I asked. Cash, he said. Enough to cover 2 months' rent and your boy's meds. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better, but I'm not expecting it back. I stared at the envelope like it might disappear if I blinked. I can't take that. You can, he said. And you will. You didn't ask to be dragged into this. The least we can do is make sure you land on your feet. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the compound as the first pale light of dawn started to creep over the horizon. There's also this, he said, pulling a business card from his pocket. He handed it to me. It was plain, just a phone number and a name, Blackridge, Northern Chapter. There's a town 2 states over, Reagan said. Quiet place. Good schools. Our brothers run a garage there. They're always looking for help in the office, answering phones, handling books. It's not much, but it's steady. And it's far enough from here that Dale won't find you. I looked down at the card, then back at him. You're telling me to leave. I'm telling you to start over, he said. If you want to. I thought about Oren, asleep in the next room, breathing easy for the first time in days. I thought about the apartment with the peeling paint and the overdue notices. I thought about Dale's voice on the phone, cold and selfish. I don't know how to thank you, I said quietly. Reagan smiled, just a little. You already did. You trusted us when you didn't have to. That's enough. Merritt walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You're a good mom, Kara. Don't let anyone tell you different. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Can I say goodbye to Oren before we go? I asked. You're not going anywhere yet, Reagan said. Rest today. We'll set you up with a ride tomorrow if you're ready. No rush. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Over the next few hours, the compound woke up around us. Men came in and out, greeting each other with quiet nods and rough laughter. Someone made breakfast, scrambled eggs, and toast that smelled like heaven. Oren woke up and came padding into the main room, Brindle tucked under his arm. He looked better. His breathing was clear. His cheeks had color. "Morning, Mom," he said, climbing into my lap like he was still small enough to fit. "Morning, baby," I said, wrapping my arms around him. Merritt brought him a plate of eggs and a cup of juice. He ate slowly, his eyes wandering around the room, taking in the men and the bikes and the photos on the wall. "Mom," he said after a while. "Yeah. Are we staying here?" I kissed the top of his head. "No, baby. But we're going somewhere new. Somewhere better." "Will Dad be there?" he asked, his voice small. I closed my eyes and held him tighter. "No, sweetheart. He won't." Oren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Okay." And somehow, that one word felt like the start of healing. Later that afternoon, Reagan found me on the porch. The sun was warm, and the air smelled like dirt and distant rain. "You doing all right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think so." He sat down beside me. "For what it's worth," he said, "you're stronger than you think. Most people would have folded under what you went through. You didn't." I looked at him. "You didn't have to help us." "Yeah," he said. "We did." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the compound settle into the rhythm of the day. "If you believe we shouldn't judge people by what they wear or where they come from," I said, almost to myself, "share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because the men who saved me and my son, the world would call them outlaws. But they were the only ones who showed up when it mattered." Reagan glanced at me, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "You sound like you're making a speech." "Maybe I am," I said. "Someone should." He stood and stretched. "Take care of yourself, Kara. And that boy." "I will," I said. "And Reagan." He turned. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." He nodded once, then walked back inside. I stayed on the porch a little longer, watching the light stretch across the gravel and the bikes and the quiet lives that lived here in the margins. Sometimes the angels don't wear white. Sometimes they rumble up on two wheels at midnight, looking like hell, and leave your world a little better than they found it. And sometimes, when you're at the end of your rope and you think there's no one left who cares, the people who show up aren't the ones you expected. They're the ones who were there all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to open the door. Sometimes the angels don't wear white. Sometimes they rumble up on two wheels at midnight, looking like hell, and leave your world a little better than they found it. And sometimes, when you're at the end of your rope and you think there's no one left who cares, the people who show up aren't the ones you expected. They're the ones who were there all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to open the door. Kara and Oren started over. They moved to that quiet town 2 states away, where nobody knew Dale's name and nobody asked questions they didn't want to answer. Oren's breathing got better. Kara found steady work. And every now and then, a postcard would show up in their mailbox with no return address. Just a single word: ride safe. She never saw Reagan or the Blackridge crew again. But she never forgot them either. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about the kind of people we write off before we know their story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that help can come from unexpected places. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been saved by someone the world told you to fear? Stories like Kara's don't get told enough. But here, on this channel, we tell them. We stand with the protectors, not the predators. We celebrate the rough hands that lift you up, not the smooth ones that let you fall. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being the kind of person who believes kindness still matters, no matter where it comes from. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.